Ethan sat in silence, his back pressed against the cold, crumbling wall of an abandoned house. A faded tarp, held down by broken bricks, served as the roof over their makeshift tent. Beside him, his 8-year-old daughter, Sophie, hummed softly, oblivious to the cold biting through their thin blankets. Her innocence was both his solace and his torment. Once, Ethan had it all: a promising career as an advertising strategist, a stable income, and dreams that stretched beyond the horizon. But in the blink of an eye, the company collapsed, taking his career and savings with it. One late notice became 2, and before long, eviction left him and Sophie wandering the streets. Now his days were filled with endless guilt and the gnawing need to survive. Ethan's mind raced with desperate thoughts as he watched Sophie cheerfully arrange pebbles in a neat circle near the tent. "Daddy, why don't we have a house like before?" she asked suddenly, her wide, curious eyes locking onto his. The question hit him like a punch to the gut. He hesitated, searching for an answer that would soothe her without revealing the crushing weight of their reality. "Sometimes things don't go as planned, sweetie," he said, forcing a smile. "But I'll fix it. I promise." Sophie nodded, her trust in him unwavering. "Okay, Daddy. I believe you." Her innocence felt like a double-edged sword. Ethan's vow to protect her had become his sole purpose, yet every day that passed without a solution chipped away at his resolve. That night, the biting wind howled against the tarp, and Sophie's stomach growled softly as she drifted to sleep. Ethan, unable to close his eyes, wrestled with memories of the life they once had: warm dinners, bedtime stories, and a roof over their heads. The next morning, hunger gnawed at them both. Ethan knew he had to act. A group of homeless men gathered near the alley whispered about Ben's Diner, a small restaurant where the owner occasionally served free meals to those in need. It was a distant hope, but one he couldn't afford to ignore. The streets were quieter than usual, save for the occasional rumble of a passing car. Ethan held Sophie's hand tightly as they walked, her small steps struggling to keep up with his determined pace. His mind replayed the murmurs he'd heard that morning. Ben's Diner, a place where those down on their luck could find a hot meal. He knew it wasn't a permanent solution, but even a brief respite felt like a lifeline. As they turned the corner, the diner came into view. The peeling paint on the sign above the door read, "Ben's Diner," and the faint glow of its interior lights spilled onto the empty sidewalk. Ethan hesitated for a moment, gripping Sophie's hand tighter. Walking into a place to ask for help was never easy, but he couldn't let pride stand in the way of his daughter's hunger. Inside, the warm aroma of simmering soup and freshly baked bread greeted them. Behind the counter stood Ben, a stocky man in his early 50s with a stern expression etched across his face. His salt and pepper hair matched the well-worn apron tied around his waist. Despite his gruff demeanor, there was something reassuring about his presence. "What can I do for you?" Ben asked, his voice low but not unkind. Ethan hesitated before replying. "I heard someone said you might have food for those who need it." His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed his discomfort. Ben's sharp gaze softened as it flicked to Sophie, who was clutching her father's hand and gazing wide-eyed at the plates of food being carried to a nearby table. "Sit down," Ben said simply, gesturing to a corner booth. A few minutes later, he brought over 2 steaming bowls of soup, a small loaf of bread, and 2 glasses of water. Sophie's face lit up as she eagerly reached for the bread. "Thank you," Ethan said quietly, his throat tight with emotion. Ben pulled up a chair and sat across from them. "You're welcome. I've been in tough spots myself, so I know how it feels. Don't worry about it." As Sophie ate with gusto, Ethan explained their situation in halting words. Ben listened intently, nodding occasionally. When Ethan finished, Ben leaned back with a sigh. "You're not the only one facing hard times," Ben said, rubbing the back of his neck. "This diner, it's my pride and joy, but business hasn't been the same for years. People don't eat out much anymore, and I'm barely keeping the lights on. I'm trying to help where I can, but..." His voice trailed off, and for the first time, Ethan noticed the exhaustion in Ben's eyes. Ethan frowned. "You've done so much for others. There has to be a way to save this place." Ben shook his head. "I've tried everything. Discounts, promotions, you name it. Nothing's worked. I might have to sell." Later, as Sophie finished her meal, she looked up at Ethan with a smile. "I like this place, Daddy. It feels like a real home." Her words were simple, but they struck Ethan deeply. Ben had given them more than food. He'd given them a moment of dignity and warmth. Ethan resolved right then and there that he couldn't let Ben lose the diner. Before they left, Ben surprised them by offering a corner of his storage room as a place to sleep. "It's not much," he said gruffly, "but it's better than that tent of yours." Ethan shook Ben's hand firmly, gratitude etched across his face. "Thank you. I won't forget this." As Sophie settled into her makeshift bed in the storage room that night, Ethan sat beside her, deep in thought. The warmth of the diner lingered in his mind, along with Sophie's innocent declaration. "This place feels like home," she had said. And Ethan, for the first time in a long while, believed that maybe, just maybe, they could find a way to make it one. The night in the storage room was restless. Ethan lay awake, his mind racing with ideas, while Sophie slept soundly beside him. The warmth and safety of the diner gave him a rare sense of stability, but it was fragile. Ben's words about selling the restaurant hung over him like a dark cloud. He couldn't let the diner close, not after what Ben had done for them. By morning, Ethan had made up his mind. He approached Ben, who was busy wiping down the counter. "Ben," Ethan began, his voice steady despite the nerves simmering beneath. "I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, about how nothing's worked to save this place." Ben glanced up, his tired eyes narrowing slightly. "Yeah? And?" Ethan took a deep breath. "I used to work in advertising. I know how to market things, make them stand out. Let me help you. Give me 1 week to bring in more customers. If I can't make a difference, then you can go ahead with selling the diner. But if I can help, I'll do it in exchange for a place for me and Sophie to stay for a while." Ben raised an eyebrow, crossing his arms. 1 week? That's not a lot of time, and I've tried everything already. What makes you think you can do better? Ethan didn't waver. "Because this isn't just about saving the diner. It's about giving Sophie a chance at something better. I won't fail her, or you." There was a long pause as Ben studied Ethan, weighing the desperation in his voice against the slim chance of success. Finally, he exhaled and nodded. "Fine. You've got a week. But I'm warning you, if this doesn't work—" "It will," Ethan said firmly. Later that day, as Ethan began surveying the diner, a new figure entered the room. A young woman with auburn hair tied in a messy bun and a guitar case slung over her shoulder. She looked around the diner with a mix of familiarity and quiet sadness. "Emma," Ben said, his tone softening. "Didn't think you'd stop by today." Emma shrugged. "Thought I'd check in, see how things are going." Her eyes landed on Ethan. "Who's this?" "I'm Ethan," he said, offering a small smile. "Just someone trying to help your dad out." Emma raised an eyebrow but said nothing, her skepticism clear. She turned back to Ben. "Still thinking of selling?" Ben nodded grimly. "Unless Ethan here pulls off a miracle." Emma's lips pressed into a thin line. She loved the diner. It had been her second home growing up, but the thought of staying and watching it crumble was unbearable. Ethan spent the afternoon walking through the diner, taking notes on everything he saw. The menu was uninspired, with generic items like grilled cheese and chicken soup. The decor, once charming, now looked dated and tired. Even the sign out front, with its chipped paint and faded letters, seemed like a relic of better days. But beneath the wear and tear, Ethan saw potential. He shared his ideas with Ben and Emma over dinner. "We need to make this place stand out," he explained. "Something bold, something people will talk about. And it starts with the menu. What if we turn ordinary dishes into an experience? Create challenges, games, promotions that get people excited to visit. Emma listened silently at first, but as Ethan spoke, a spark of curiosity lit her eyes. "You really think you can make that work?" "I know I can," Ethan said, "but I'll need help." Emma hesitated, then nodded. "All right, I'll help. But don't think I'm doing this because I believe in your plan. I'm doing it because I believe in this diner." Ethan smiled. "That's all I need." With Emma on board, the preparations began. Ethan worked late into the night, sketching out campaigns and brainstorming ideas, while Emma cleaned and reorganized the space. Ben, still skeptical but cautiously hopeful, watched them from the corner, his heart quietly daring to hope. The following morning, Ethan's plan began to take shape. Armed with a piece of chalk and an old easel they had found in the storage room, he scribbled down the words that would define their first campaign. "Guess the dish challenge, order a surprise dish. Guess it right, and it's free." The message was bold and playful, designed to spark curiosity in anyone passing by. Ethan placed the chalkboard outside the diner, angling it just right so it caught the morning sunlight. The once quiet sidewalk now held a flicker of promise. Emma watched from the doorway, arms crossed. "Do you really think people will go for it?" she asked, her tone a mix of doubt and intrigue. "They will," Ethan replied confidently. "Everyone loves a challenge, and if we make it fun, they'll keep coming back." The first hour was painfully quiet. Ethan adjusted the sign every few minutes, his stomach knotting as people walked past without stopping. Ben, standing behind the counter, muttered, "Told you this wouldn't work." But then, a man in his late 20s paused in front of the sign. He leaned closer to read it, then opened the door and stepped inside. "Hey, so how does this challenge work?" the man asked, his voice tinged with curiosity. Emma, quick to respond, walked over with a menu in hand. "It's simple," she said, her smile warm and inviting. "We'll bring you a random dish from our menu. If you can guess what it is before you finish, your meal is on the house." The man smirked. "All right, I'll give it a shot. Bring me your best mystery dish." Ben, despite his skepticism, whipped up a plate of his signature beef stew. As the man took his first bite, Emma stood by, engaging him in friendly conversation. Ethan watched from the corner, his heart racing. When the man finally guessed correctly, "Beef stew, right?" Emma laughed and clapped her hands. "You've got it. Congrats, your meal's free." The customer left, satisfied and grinning. But what happened next exceeded Ethan's expectations. Within hours, the man had posted about the challenge on social media, and people began trickling in, eager to try their luck. By the afternoon, the diner was busier than it had been in months. Tables filled up, and the once faded atmosphere buzzed with energy. Emma moved between tables effortlessly, her warmth making every customer feel welcome. Even Ben, usually stoic, couldn't hide his surprise. This is actually working," he said, almost to himself, as he plated another order. Ethan, meanwhile, kept an eye on everything, stepping in to greet customers, manage orders, and make sure the challenge ran smoothly. That night, after the last customer had left, Ethan and Emma sat at a booth, exhaustion etched into their faces, but replaced by quiet satisfaction. "This was a good day," Emma admitted, sipping from a mug of coffee. "You've got some serious ideas, Ethan." Ethan chuckled softly. "Advertising is all about understanding people, and today proved that even the smallest spark of curiosity can light up a place like this." As they talked, the walls between them began to lower. Emma shared stories about growing up in the diner, how it had been a second home until the struggles of keeping it afloat had driven her away. Ethan, in turn, opened up about his past, his career, the sudden loss, and his determination to build a better life for Sophie. For the first time in years, Emma felt a glimmer of hope not just for the diner, but for herself. The buzz of the Guess the Dish Challenge campaign was still in the air as Ethan began brainstorming ways to keep the momentum alive. The diner's tables were fuller than before, but he knew they needed something more, a unique hook to turn the diner into a true destination. Late one evening, As Ethan cleaned up in the kitchen, he heard a soft, melodic humming. He paused, listening. The tune floated gently through the air, filling the quiet space with a surprising warmth. Curious, Ethan stepped into the back and found Emma sitting on a stool, her guitar resting on her lap. Her fingers danced effortlessly across the strings as she hummed a tune that was equal parts haunting and beautiful. She hadn't noticed him yet, completely lost in the rhythm. "You never said you could play," Ethan said, leaning against the doorway. Emma flinched, her cheeks flushing. "I didn't know I had to announce it," she replied, setting the guitar aside like she'd been caught doing something forbidden. Ethan stepped closer, intrigued. "You're good. Really good. Why haven't you performed before?" Emma shrugged, avoiding his gaze. "It's just something I do for myself. I'm not exactly a professional." An idea sparked in Ethan's mind. What if we added live music to the diner? A performance could create an incredible atmosphere and give people even more reason to come back. Emma shook her head instantly. "No way. That's not me. I'm not cut out to perform in front of people." Ethan didn't push her, sensing her unease. But the next day, as they worked together in the storage room, Sophie overheard the conversation and immediately chimed in. "Emma, you have to sing. Daddy says you're amazing, and I bet everyone else would think so too." Sophie's wide, eager eyes sparkled with excitement. Emma smiled nervously. "I don't know, Sophie. It's a lot scarier than you think." "We can practice here," Ethan suggested. "Just me and Sophie. No pressure. If it doesn't feel right, we'll drop it. But give it a shot." Emma hesitated, glancing between Ethan and Sophie's hopeful faces. "Fine," she said finally, "but don't expect miracles." That night, they turned the storage room into an impromptu rehearsal space. Ethan played a steady rhythm on a borrowed keyboard, Sophie clapped along, and Emma, though hesitant at first, began to sing. Her voice started soft, but as the song progressed, it grew more confident, filling the space with raw emotion. "You've got this," Ethan said, his voice steady and encouraging. A week later, the diner was buzzing with anticipation. Flyers promising live music night had been distributed throughout the neighborhood. Ben, initially skeptical, had grudgingly agreed to let Emma perform, though he was now pacing nervously behind the counter. When the clock struck 7 p.m., the lights dimmed slightly, and Emma stepped onto a makeshift stage at the front of the diner. Dressed simply but elegantly, with her guitar in hand, she looked out at the crowd. Her hands trembled, but when she caught Ethan's reassuring smile from the back of the room, she took a deep breath and began. The first note silenced the chatter. Emma's voice, soulful and rich, wove through the room like a thread connecting every listener. She sang a heartfelt ballad about love and resilience, her fingers strumming the guitar with practiced ease. By the time she finished, the diner erupted in applause. Customers clapped and cheered, some even wiping away tears. Ben, standing frozen at the counter, broke into a rare grin. After the performance, the diner slowly emptied, but the warmth lingered. Ethan found Emma sitting at a booth, her guitar resting against the wall. "You were incredible," he said, sliding into the seat across from her. Emma smiled shyly. "I still can't believe I did that." Ethan leaned forward. "You didn't just perform, Emma. You gave this place a soul tonight." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the noise of the world faded. Ethan realized something he hadn't fully admitted to himself. He was drawn to Emma, not just for her talent, but for the quiet strength she carried beneath her doubts. "Thank you," Emma said softly. "For what?" "For believing in me," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan smiled. "Always." As they sat in the dimly lit diner, the bond between them deepened, and the future of Ben's diner seemed brighter than ever. The early glow of success from the Guess the Dish challenge and Emma's live music performance began to fade as reality crept back in. While the diner had seen a surge in customers, the financial hole Ben was in was deeper than anyone wanted to admit. The costs of running the business, ingredients, utilities, and overdue bills, still loomed ominously. Ethan felt the pressure mounting as he pored over numbers late into the night, scribbling ideas and crossing them out just as quickly. The momentum they had built seemed fragile, teetering on the edge of slipping away. Ethan decided they needed another innovative push. Drawing on the success of the previous challenge, he came up with the idea of a new game. Guess the juice flavor. Customers could order a random juice blend and guess its ingredients for a chance to win free refills. On launch day, a colorful chalkboard outside the diner announced the promotion. Initially, the idea brought in a small trickle of curious customers, but it failed to capture the same excitement as the first challenge. By the third day, the buzz had fizzled out. Tables were once again sitting empty during the lunch rush. Ethan stood near the counter, his shoulders heavy with disappointment. Ben, watching from the back, grumbled quietly. "Not every idea is a winner, kid. You gave it a shot." Emma, sensing Ethan's frustration, tried to comfort him. "It's not your fault. You've already done so much for this place. We'll figure something out." But Ethan's mind was clouded with self-doubt. "It's not enough," he said quietly. "We're running out of time." That evening, as the team sat together in the empty diner, brainstorming ways to turn things around, Emma hesitantly spoke up. "What if we make the music a bigger part of the experience?" Ethan looked up from his notebook. "What do you mean?" Emma bit her lip, her fingers nervously tapping on the table. "People loved the live music night, right? What if we build on that? We could make it a regular event, but with a twist. A live music and song guessing game. I'll perform, and customers can try to guess the song I'm playing. If they get it right, they win a small prize. A dessert, maybe." Ben raised an eyebrow. "You think people would come back for that?" Emma nodded. "I think they will. Music creates a connection. It's personal. And the guessing game adds an interactive element that gets people involved." Ethan's expression softened, the weight lifting slightly from his features. "It's bold, it's creative, and I think it's exactly what we need." The team got to work immediately. They decorated the diner with string lights and rearranged a corner to create a small stage, making it more inviting. Flyers were distributed around the neighborhood, announcing the first official live music and song guessing game night. When the evening arrived, the diner was alive with anticipation. Emma took the stage, her guitar in hand, as Ethan and Sophie worked the tables, welcoming customers and explaining the rules of the game. Emma's first song was a soulful acoustic rendition of a classic hit. The diners leaned in, whispering guesses to one another, their excitement growing. When a young couple correctly guessed the song, the room erupted in cheers. Emma's smile was radiant as she launched into her next piece, the atmosphere electric with energy. The interactive game brought out laughter, competition, and camaraderie among the customers. By the end of the night, the diner had not only filled every seat, but had also seen its highest profits in years. As the last guests left, Ben stood by the counter, watching the empty tables with a rare smile. "This is the best night we've had in I don't even know how long," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Ethan, wiping down a table, glanced at Emma, who was packing up her guitar. "It's because of her," he said. "She gave this place its heartbeat back." Emma, overhearing, blushed but smiled. "We all did this together." That night, as the team cleaned up, there was an unmistakable shift in the air. The diner wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. And for the first time in years, the future felt bright. The day Ben returned from his short trip, the diner was unrecognizable. The once dim lights now glowed warmly, casting a golden hue over the bustling tables. The cheerful hum of conversation mixed with the soft strumming of Emma's guitar on stage. The energy in the room was palpable. This wasn't just a diner anymore. It was the heartbeat of the neighborhood. Ben stepped inside and stopped in his tracks. His eyes darted around, taking in the full house and the line of customers waiting at the door. Ethan, dressed sharply in an apron and moving with practiced ease, greeted guests as if he'd been doing it for years. Sophie weaved between tables with an eager smile, carrying plates and chatting with customers. Emma, perched on the small stage, finished her song to thunderous applause. Her eyes lit up when she noticed her father. "Dad!" she called, setting her guitar aside and hurrying over to him. Ben embraced her, still too stunned to speak. Ethan approached, wiping his hands on a towel. "Welcome back, Ben," he said with a grin. "What do you think?" Ben looked around, his voice catching. I don't know what to say. This place is alive again." He glanced at Emma, then back at Ethan. "And it's all thanks to you two, not just us," Ethan corrected, smiling. "It's a team effort. But we couldn't have done it without Emma's music, or your trust." Ben's gaze softened. "You've done more than just save this diner, Ethan. You've given me something I didn't think I'd ever see again. Hope." As the night continued, Ben watched the dynamic between Ethan and Emma. The easy smiles, the exchanged glances, the unspoken understanding. It was clear to anyone paying attention. Later, as they cleaned up after closing, Ben caught Ethan in the kitchen. "You know," Ben said, crossing his arms, "you've done an incredible job here. But I've noticed you've been a little distracted lately." Ethan froze mid-wipe, looking up. "Distracted?" Ben chuckled. "Don't play dumb. I see the way you look at Emma. Just make sure you treat her right." Ben's words stuck with Ethan. The next evening, as the diner wrapped up another successful day, Ethan found Emma sitting on the stage, tuning her guitar. The soft glow of the string lights made her look radiant. "Emma," Ethan began, his heart pounding as he approached her. "Can I talk to you for a second?" She looked up, her brow furrowing slightly at his serious tone. "Of course. What's up?" Ethan took a deep breath, then knelt in front of her, pulling a small ring box from his pocket. Emma gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "Emma," he said, his voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions coursing through him. "These past weeks, working alongside you, seeing your passion and strength, it's changed my life. You've changed my life. I don't just want to build a future for Sophie and me. I want to build it with you. Will you marry me?" Emma's eyes filled with tears as she nodded, her smile breaking through her shock. "Yes, yes, of course I'll marry you." From behind the counter, Sophie let out a loud cheer. "I knew it! I knew it!" she shouted, running to hug them both. The news of their engagement spread quickly, and the diner became the backdrop for their joyous celebration. Customers, friends, and neighbors all shared in their happiness. The wedding, held a few months later in the diner itself, was a beautiful, intimate affair. Emma walked down the aisle to her own music, played softly by a local band. Ethan, standing at the altar with Sophie at his side, couldn't help but marvel at how far they had come. With Ethan's vision, Emma's music, and Ben's unwavering support, the diner continued to thrive, becoming a staple in the community. It wasn't just a place to eat. It was a place where people came to feel connected, to celebrate life's milestones, and to find hope in the simplest of things. Months turned into years, and the diner became more than just a neighborhood gem. It transformed into a community hub. Ben's diner, once teetering on the edge of closure, now radiated life. Its reputation spread beyond the local streets, drawing people from nearby towns. The idea of combining great food with music and interactive experiences proved so successful that Ethan and Emma began receiving offers to expand the concept. With Ben's blessing, they took the leap, opening a second location in a neighboring city. Ethan's marketing acumen and Emma's passion for creating a warm, welcoming atmosphere made them a formidable team. Balancing their growing business with their personal lives was no easy feat, but their shared vision and unwavering support for one another carried them through. Amid the whirlwind of business growth, Ethan and Emma's family also grew. A year after their wedding, they welcomed a baby boy, Liam. The arrival of a new family member brought immeasurable joy to their lives. Sophie, now 10, embraced her role as a big sister with pride, often doting on Liam and delighting in making him laugh. Liam's giggles became a regular backdrop to the bustling diner, reminding everyone that the heart of their success was rooted in family and love. Even Ben, who had semi-retired to enjoy the fruits of their labor, often stopped by to spoil his grandson and share stories with customers who still fondly remembered the diner's earlier days. Do you feel inspired by this story of resilience, love, and hope? If you were in Ethan's shoes, how would you face such challenges? Let us know your thoughts. Take a moment to share your reflections or leave a comment below. Your feedback helps us grow and create even more compelling stories to share with you. If this tale touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. By doing so, you'll never miss out on the incredible stories we have in store for you. Your support fuels our passion to bring you narratives that inspire, move, and entertain. Thank you for being part of this journey, and may your day be filled with positivity and good fortune.